So yesterday was June 6th, the D-Day anniversary.
You know, it's not just D-Day, but it's also the anniversary of several other battles like Midway or the Six-Day War.
Yeah.
Gee, you know,
What is up with June, actually? There's a ton of famous battles. I think we should talk about that, yeah?
I think we should talk about
I
it.
think we're fully prepared to do that. Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Dustin Bass.
And I'm Alan Joaquin.
And we are the Sons of History. And yes, we're going to be talking about June battles. It is really crazy when you look through history and see some of the battles that happened in June.
Yeah, now we're going to concentrate more on June the 6th and then, the day before, the day after, and what, those 3 days were pretty busy in history.
Speaking of the day after, that's a messed up movie.
The day after or the day after tomorrow? Both of them.
That one sucked.
Yeah, that was sick. Well, actually, they both kind of.
Yeah, well, one's a TV movie.
Yeah, one of them.
Both of those are probably never getting on our movie recommendation lists.
Well, the day after was very significant because it made Ronald Reagan, really think hard about nuclear war and its effects on the country. So
insane.
But the day after tomorrow, that.
Climate
God.
change.
Yes.
Yeah, it's creeping up on us extremely fast.
Isn't the 10-year anniversary up? Shouldn't we be dead by now? I don't know. Anyway, so
at some point in time, I wish we were.
Especially, hey, let me tell you something. The drive here, and and to Kingwood and some other.
45's a joke.
So it's 59 or 69.
Oh, it's all trash. It's all trash in Houston. All right, so let's start with really the most famous, at least maybe that everybody knows, and that is the one that happened, or the anniversary that was yesterday, is D-Day.
Correct, 1944.
Yeah.
That was the big day. Now that was, Hitler had controlled Western Europe for about 4 years, and Eisenhower led a huge coalition to finally rid Western Europe of the Nazis.
Yeah. So on D-Day, obviously the Americans, the British, and the Canadians, they all storm the beaches of Normandy.
Correct.
And what's interesting is that it shouldn't have happened on June 6th, right?
No, actually it's supposed to happen June the 5th. But one of the worst storms in 20 years was walloping the Normandy coast that day.
So. Now, we were talking about that, and you were saying that, what was it, Rommel was like, they're not...
Yeah, Rommel went to go be with his wife for her birthday. So, everyone was like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
The weather was just too horrible. So,
how much longer was it after that before he got suicided?
He got, now the assassination attempt, that Operation Valkyrie was, I think, July 20th. So that was, about a month later?
Yeah. And
I don't remember the exact date when Rommel killed himself, but it was after July 20th, so yeah.
Yes, and there you have it. So what's interesting is that on that, what was it, Hitler was sleeping. He was taking, his sleeping pills because he's all stressed out,
Yeah.
Yeah,
there was a panzer unit that was stuck in Calais because everyone thought, they're going to be landing in Calais. And, listen, I never visited Calais, but I have visited Normandy. Yeah. And I really couldn't understand why they would invade. Yeah, because, when you approach, say, Omaha Beach, especially where, in Omaha Beach, you had the 1st Division, and then you had the 29th Division. Now, the 4th Division landed on Utah Beach. But where the 29th Division landed, I would not have wanted to have been there. Dog Green sector.
Yeah.
I mean, as you are walking on the beach, and they had to walk they had to crawl 300 yards. You have these high bluffs. I mean, and they were up there. And then when if you're on Dog Green and you look to your right, I think the sector to their right was Charlie, where the Rangers landed. I mean, the bluffs there are even higher than that. I don't know why they picked that area.
I don't either.
I mean, it was a slaughter.
It's like an impossibility to get over there.
Our men were slaughtered. They were slaughtered.
So terrible. If you've seen Saving Private Ryan, then you have a slight glimpse into what that must have been like.
Well, that was Doug Green's sector in Saving Private Ryan.
So it's just trying to get to those bluffs to get some type of shelter.
You know, I read that like within the first few minutes, all the officers were dead except for one. There was one man that was still alive out of all the officers who landed. And more than half of the men had been killed or incapacitated, insane. More than half.
It's insane.
I don't think those guys, I mean, they were young kids. They were kids.
Yeah.
I don't think they knew what they were getting themselves into.
No.
So.
Not at all. But that was the turning point in the war.
Yeah.
Because there were a ton of divisions that Germany had in occupied Europe and in France, right? I mean, they could have just sent a ton there and would have outnumbered the Allies extremely, but decisions weren't made, and somebody was knocking on the door trying to get Hitler's attention, but he's like, nine! Or maybe his,
I don't know.
his helper was like,
someone.
Nine!
Yeah, they're like, nope,
no one wake him up! You're not!
Yeah.
Because
if they did, they'd be like, zzz, to the Russian front.
Yeah.
That's what would have happened. But, well, you know, Patton did not take part of the invasion. Yeah. Which surprised the Germans. They're saying, okay, Patton is still in England. This just proves that the Normandy invasion is a diversion. The real invasion is going to be in Calais. Now, Calais is like if you're on the cliffs of Dover in England and you look across the English Channel and you see France, that's Calais. Yeah. So, you know, naturally they just assumed that that's where the invasion was going to take place. It made more sense.
Now, another big turning point was the Battle of Midway, which was in the Pacific Theater.
Correct.
Which happened about 6 months, almost to the day, after Pearl Harbor, the Pearl Harbor attack.
Now, it didn't start on June the 6th, but it did take place during June the 6th.
Yeah.
So, and that was another battle that, you know, we should not have won.
Yeah.
But,
we're outnumbered again.
Yeah, they had the Japanese. We had 3 carriers. One of them was crippled, and the Yorktown was crippled from the Battle of the Coral Sea, which was just a month previous.
Right.
And then you also had the commander, Halsey, I think William Halsey. He had some sort of like a rash, and he was hospitalized. So you had Fletcher, who controlled the Yorktown, and then you had Admiral Fletcher for the Yorktown, and then you had a young guy, Admiral Spruance, Raymond Spruance, who was like a destroyer commander. Yeah. He was in control of the Hornet and the Enterprise. So when the Yorktown caught up with the Enterprise and the Hornet, Fletcher took over. But yeah, you had 2.5 carriers basically because the Yorktown was crippled. Now the Japanese, you had Nagumo, who led the Pearl Harbor attack, and he had 4 of the best carriers. He had his flagship, the Akagi. You had the Kaga. I hope I'm pronouncing these right. The Soryu and the Hiryu.
Hear you. I hear you.
You hear me? Do you hear me?
I hear you.
Yeah. So 4 carriers against 3 American carriers. Yeah. Again, one of them very crippled.
Yeah. So and it came down to breaking and the movie Midway that came out a year or 2 ago.
But yeah, well, I would say it came out in 2019. I think like in the winter or fall of 2019.
Yeah, so they did a good job, and especially when they did the breakdown of the I guess the code breaking. Where they figured out, okay, this is
the purple machine.
We figured out what AF means.
Yeah, they kept hearing AF. Okay, what is AF?
Yeah,
and they pulled a little trick. They said that the water machine.
Yeah, we're out of water, out of fresh water. Yeah, AF is out of fresh water. Yeah,
they converting salt water to fresh water, which is a big deal because Midway is out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. So they, if you can't have fresh water there,
then you're dead.
Yeah, they have to supply it. So logistics was an important matter. So the Japanese, afterwards, when they kept saying Midway, they were sending out the signal. Midway is having problems with their water machines. The Japanese warned their commanders in the Pacific that AF is having problems with
their water.
Yeah. So they knew
right there. That's how they knew.
Yeah. The guy's name was Rochefort, I think was his name. He's the guy that broke the code.
Yeah, the guy in the robe.
Yeah, that's the one.
The house slippers. Yeah,
that's the one.
So that was an insane battle. The Japanese got destroyed.
Yeah,
during that.
They lost all their carriers.
Yeah,
all their carriers.
Can you believe that? I mean,
that means they lost all their planes.
Yeah.
And
So,
I don't know how many pilots. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, you know, they got what they deserved.
They got what they deserve.
Look,
hey,
I love the
you woke up
Japanese of
beast.
today.
You woke up the beast. You woke
That's
up a
right.
sleeping giant.
That's right.
So,
I did.
Yeah, and you know, our losses were very minimal. Just look at these numbers. They lost over 3,000 men. They lost the 4 carriers. They lost a cruiser and hundreds of aircraft. They lost all their aircraft.
They lost
right?
a heavy cruiser,
Yeah. And for the Americans, they only lost a little over 350 men.
Yeah.
They lost a carrier, destroyer, and about 140 aircraft.
Yeah, the destroyer was sunk by a torpedo, and that was the one that finished off the Yorktown, and that was like on the last day. But yeah, they, you know, now it started off really bad. I mean, really bad. We lost pretty much most of our fighter planes from Midway Island itself. But, you know, a lot of them were like Buffalo. I mean, old antique planes, Buffaloes and some, I don't know if there were some Wildcats, but I do know Buffaloes were involved, and they were no match for the
And the Buffaloes were almost extinct.
Yeah, the man with those damn Americans.
Wild Bill.
Yeah.
Stupid idiot.
But you know, the way the battle progressed was that the torpedo planes were attacking first. They didn't have any air cover. The American fighter planes were with the American dive bombers. So when the torpedoes came in low with no fighter cover, I mean, the Hornet lost all of their torpedo planes. I think it was called the Torpedo 8. I think that's what they called it. They had one survivor, and who happened to be an Aggie. His name was George Gay. And they showed him.
Is that the guy in the water?
Yeah, he was the only survivor out of Hornets, all of Hornets' men, and a majority of the Yorktown and the Enterprise also lost their torpedo planes. But the cool thing is that when the Japanese fighters were so distracted down here, you know, on the deck trying to stop the torpedo planes, way above were the dive bombers with the fighter escort. They didn't see them until
too late.
Like that Wade McCluskey guy who's in the movie.
Yeah.
He had a nose for finding those.
Oh man. That was a fun movie to watch in the theater. That was quite a ride.
Now initially they got 3 of the carriers. The Hiryu was too far away, but they got the Soryu, Kage, and Akagi.
Yeah. And so that battle was June 4th to June 7th. Actually, today is the anniversary of the end of that battle, Battle of Midway.
Yeah.
And as we'd like to mention, our episode is brought to you by Patriot Knife Coffee Company. Our good friend Chris McLean over there has delicious coffee. You still drinking it up now that you've got the COVID out of the way?
Yes, I had COVID. I told my mom today I had COVID. I finally told her. I was like, yep, I had the COVID.
Yeah? What did she say?
And she freaked. Why didn't you tell me? I was like, because you'd freak.
Yeah, you'd freak out. Yeah. But you're home free now.
Yeah, I got tested negative about a week ago. So.
Yeah, and testing positive is the coffee. Texas Bourbon Pecan, our personal favorite. And also, you've got the Foster's Run, which has an incredible story to it. But you can go to patriotknifecoffee.com, make your purchase, use the code word history, and get 15% off of your order. You got to spend at least $15 on your order, but get 15% off. And it's delicious coffee.
It is.
And it's veteran owned.
You know, it's not like that swill you were serving me.
I know, and I greatly apologize. Mass production horse crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. I apologize. That's on me.
You know, apology not accepted.
Well, good.
Anyway,
all right. So
now, you know, I wanted to say that, you know, I mentioned we mentioned, you know, some of the World War II battles. Now, these were some of the big ones. I mean, there were some other battles, obviously, that took place in June, but it, you know, it wasn't just World War II, but, you know, the 6-Day War is a very famous battle. Now, that did not start on June the 6th. That started on June the 5th. I want to let people know. But that, you know, and you know, there was another battle that we're going to get into. But, you know, that also in and of itself is just a fascinating.
It is.
Fascinating. Now, I have to be careful.
You talk about David and Goliath.
Yeah, I know. I have to be careful because I have family in one of those Arab countries that were involved. So, you know. I have to look at this. I'm going to talk about this from a historical perspective. This is strictly historical, so
nobody flip
family
out.
Members, and then you know the government that's probably going to be watching and going, you're the guy that talked ill about our nation.
You idiot!
Rejected. You are no entry into this country. In fact, off to jail you go. No, what are they?
Well, actually, that would give
yeah,
you entrance into the country.
Yes. Oh, that's true. That's true.
But, you cannot come into this country unless, of course, we get to take you to jail.
Yeah, to the Iron Maiden. Anyway, so all right.
Oh, great band.
Okay, so now
actually not a great band. I never liked their music, and their posters freaked me out as a kid.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I'll be a poser before I'm an Iron Maiden. You know. Anyway, okay, so 1967.
I don't even get it.
1967. All right, so you have Egypt had a president named Gamal Abdel Nasser. And he was trying to nationalize all the Arab countries to become one big, like a caliphate type of, and he would be the leader.
Yeah.
Now he got the Syrians to join, so, you know, for a few years, like in 1958 around that time, Egypt and Syria were a united country known as the United Arab Republic. But then Syria kind of like, you know, backed out of it.
Yeah.
But he considered King Hussein of Jordan his enemy because he did not believe in royalty. The same way with Saudi Arabia. But King Hussein could see the writing on the wall, and he realized if he didn't join forces with Nasser, you know, Egypt and Syria were going to cut his throat.
When you say he didn't believe in royalty, what do you mean?
Well, you know, Nasser was against, you know, kings.
Oh, I thought you said Jordan, like the King Hussein was against royalty.
No, Nasser.
Okay, I was like, wait a minute.
No, Nasser.
He is royalty. Okay, go ahead.
Nasser of Egypt was against royalty.
Okay.
So he was an enemy of King Hussein of Jordan. Now, King Hussein, he had the Palestinians in his, he had a lot of Palestinians, half the country were Palestinians, you know, in Jordan. He had the enemy of Syria above.
Which makes sense with the flags.
Yeah.
They're pretty much the same thing, except the star.
So he had Syria was his enemy, Egypt was his enemy, Iraq was his ally until his cousin was murdered in 1958. So Iraq was practically his enemy. So he's like, you know what? I think I'm going to become brothers with Nasser. So he becomes brothers. You know, they formed a brotherhood. Okay, you're my, I love you type of thing. So, you know, Nasser was like, okay. So what he did was he sent forces into the Sinai Peninsula and kept threatening, you know, to annihilate Israel. Again, folks, I'm talking this from a historical perspective.
Historical.
So I'm not taking sides. Yeah. So, families. I don't want my family to know. You know.
Oh yeah. Of course.
Okay. All right. So, now there was a UN contingent along the Israeli Egyptian border in the Sinai, and Nasser told them to leave. So now, you know, Egyptian troops and Israeli troops, they could see each other. And so he had now Jordan on his side, and he had Syria, and there was Iraqi units that were also in Jordan. So what Israel did was on June the 5th, they launched an attack. They're like, you know, okay, we're going to, you know, they felt like they were being threatened, so they attacked, and they did kind of a blitzkrieg action. Their fighter planes went and annihilated the Egyptian and the Jordanian air forces. Just totally wiped them out. The Israeli army then went into Egypt. They captured the Sinai in a matter of like 2-3 days, 4 days. The fighting ended with Egypt by the 4th day. Same thing with Jordan. Now, also, I wanted to mention the Gaza Strip. So the Gaza Strip and the Sinai were captured. That's what the Egyptians controlled. The Jordanians controlled the West Bank, and they controlled also East Jerusalem. So
they had the Jerusalem Wall, right?
They had something
like the Berlin Wall.
The Jerusalem Wall. Well, no, they do have a wall, the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall.
Yeah.
So that's how the Israelis ended up capturing Jerusalem and the West Bank. Now the Syrians, you know, and I haven't really seen too much of this, but I read somewhere that the Lebanese, 2 Lebanese planes took place in an air raid, and they lost one of them.
What do you mean?
When the 6-Day War was taking place, because Lebanon was not invaded, Syria was invaded. Syria, you know, after Israel took care of Egypt and captured the Sinai, which is like twice the size of Israel. But after they captured the Sinai and they captured the West Bank, Then they went after Syria because Syria was launching attacks from the Golan Heights. I've seen the Golan Heights. It's pretty high up. It's a high mountain range. So after they took care of Jordan and Egypt and they stopped fighting and there was a ceasefire, Israel then went after Syria and they captured the Golan Heights. Now Lebanon was the only country that was spared, but they did launch an air raid. From what I read in one source, said that they launched an air raid. 2 planes, Lebanese Air Force planes, were involved.
Watch out.
And they lost one of them. I mean, come on! 50%?
50% of your Air Force right there.
I mean...
Yeah, you're wiped out.
Maybe I shouldn't call myself a Lebanese.
You call yourself an American.
I'm an American,
there
but I
go.
mean,
You take pride in the Battle of Midway.
It's right. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, so that was...
Yeah, it was like, when you look at the numbers in those battles, it's insane. Yeah, especially against Egypt. Like, you're just outnumbered extravagantly. And then put a whooping on them.
I mean, Egypt is on 2 continents.
Yeah.
That's how big they were.
That's how big they are.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, anyway. All right, now, but that wasn't the only time that Israel was involved in a war.
Right.
Now, let's jump up about 15 years.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to go back to the Philistines.
No. We're gonna now from 67 to 1982. So we're talking. It's weird to think it was 15 years later, but back then I was thinking, man, that was a long time. But so now in 1982, there was a now what had happened was that prior to that there was the Lebanese Civil War, and so you had the fighting between the Christians.
Is that the one that your parents?
My family was involved. From? Yeah, my family was involved in the Lebanese Civil War, and then the PLO got involved. Yasser Arafat and the PLO, and then Syria came in, and Syria came in as peacekeepers, but then there was
People's Liberation Army.
Yeah, so that that didn't go over too well with the Syrians. So you had the Syrians occupying the country. You had the PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, occupying the country. And then you had these militia units. You had the Lebanese Christian militia units around Beirut. You had the Amal Nabi Berry, I think was his name, and I think he's still there. Yeah. I mean, this guy's been there for like forever.
He's been there
I think
for a while.
So you had the Shiites, you had the Sunnis, you had the Druze, and then in the south you had the United Nations, and you had Saad Haddad with his Southern Lebanese Army that was allied with Israel. So now I think it was around June the 3rd, June the 4th. I'm not exactly sure what the date was, but the Israeli ambassador to the United Kingdom, his name was Shlomo Argov, was he was attacked. Now it wasn't the PLO that did it. It was actually Abu Nidal that was a rival of the PLO. But Menachem Begin and Ariel Sharon. Menachem Begin was the prime minister. Ariel Sharon was the defense minister.
That sounds sort of like what Jerry Lewis would say.
Menachem
Begin.
Yeah, I liked Jerry Lewis. Well, anyway, so when they attacked, he didn't die, but he was severely hit. So Israel, there were a lot of bases, PLO bases in Lebanon. So Israel launched some air attacks on the PLO bases. So then the PLO started shelling northern Israel, the Galilee area. So this went on for a couple days. So finally, on June the 6th,
Jesus arrives, walking on the Sea of Galilee.
Not even close.
Close.
Where did you even come up with some of these things?
I don't know.
Well,
Christian Orthodoxy.
Now, it was called Peace for Galilee. Yeah. But the Israelis then, with the backing of... Now, they had the backing of Saad Haddad with the Southern Lebanese Army, but they also had the backing of the Lebanese forces, the phalangists. There was a guy who led it. His name was Bashir Gemayel. And Bashir Gemayel ended up becoming president of Lebanon, but then he got assassinated. Well, he was elected president of Lebanon, but he was assassinated before.
So what happened during the battle?
So anyway, all right. So the battle.
I don't need the backstory.
Well, no, but I mean,
that goes on the Middle East.
It's a good story. Hey, come on, I'm trying to love it. All right. So Israel invades, and you know, they said that they were just going to stop at around maybe the Litani or maybe to Sidon, but they kept going and kept going, and they went all the way to Beirut. Now, the Christians controlled, their allies, the Christians controlled eastern Beirut. The PLO and the Muslims controlled West Beirut. So when the Israelis came in, they hooked up with the Christians, and so now West Beirut was surrounded. Now, the Syrians also got involved during this, and you know that there was like a 3-day air war that took place over Lebanon. Now, the Israelis did lose one jet, I think it was like a Skyhawk, on the first day, but that was shot down by ground forces. They also lost a helicopter. But when they had dogfights between the Syrian jets and the Israeli jets...
This is going to blow your mind.
In a 3-day period, and I remember this when it happened, in a 3-day period, the Israelis shot down 100 Syrian jets. Dogfights. Minimum, 100. You know how many Israelis were shot down by the Syrians?
Oh, I can guess.
A goose egg. Zero. Not one. It was 100 to nothing. That was... Wow.
Yeah.
That did not make the Soviet Union look good.
No.
Because those were Soviet jets that the Syrians were flying.
Yeah, where they're not self-flying.
So, anyway. So, yeah, I mean, and, you know, that for me, that had a personal...
Yeah. Of course, yeah.
Because my family was there at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
It's insane. Well, back to the U.S., all the way back to the U.S.
Let's talk about, I mean, like some of the stuff weren't specifically on June the 6th, but June is a pretty busy month if you're in battle.
Yeah, and we've got some famous battles. I mean, obviously we've talked about D-Day, which is one of the most famous battles in history, even Midway, you know. And then the 6-Day War is sort of this
It was
insane
a huge turning point in the Middle East. I mean, it was a huge effect in the Middle East politics. And
so,
which we still feel the repercussions to this day.
We're feeling repercussions all the time.
Yeah.
From past decisions. That's why we do this show. So, all right. So, June has a number of other incredible battles, and of course, we're just touching on a few of them. But going all the way back to the U.S. during the American Revolution, the Great Battle of Bunker Hill, also correctly known as Breed's Hill.
Yeah.
So this was a major turning point in the American Revolution because it proved that, hey, the Americans can freaking fight. Yeah. You know, we can take it to them.
Yeah, the British were not expecting the kind of loss. They had like over 1,000, 1,100 casualties. I mean, William Howe was one of the generals that fought in that battle. And I mean, he was walking. He saw so many of his officers, so many of his men killed. Yeah. That had a profound impact on him.
Yeah, they had more than twice as many casualties as the Americans did.
Yeah, I mean,
and it was...
And they weren't expecting it. They thought that the Americans, as soon as they saw the redcoats marching towards them, that they would just...
flip out and run off. No,
the Americans...
There were 3 charges, but there were 2 volleys shot, but... Unfortunately, in the third one, we ran out of powder and shot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, powder was really the big thing because by that time, if you don't have powder, you're not going to be able to fire your weapon. Shoot. And they didn't have bayonets. The British had bayonets. The Americans didn't. I mean, you had like the Commander Prescott was standing there with his knife. With a saber. Yeah. But you had.
Didn't he say don't shoot until you see the white in their eyes?
Well, there's a controversy. Either Israel Putnam said that, or that Stark, the guy from New Hampshire, Stark.
Okay. John Starks from New York Knicks.
No, I don't know if it's from New York Knicks, but no, I think Stark or Starks.
Okay.
One of those two stated, "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes."
I thought that was William Prescott.
I don't think he said that.
Maybe.
I mean, for everything I've been reading, it was either Putnam or Stark.
I thought I read it. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
We're going to find that out. Yeah. And I'm going to be wrong, as I always am.
I was like, really? You're going to fight me on this one?
No, I'm not. But I have learned my lesson. Yeah. I learned my lesson about that first year into our show, and I'm like, the hell with this, because I'm always wrong. Every single time I'm like, hey, no, Alan, I think I'm right. And then I would go and look and be like, well, okay, I was wrong. But even what Sir Henry Clinton he called it a dear-bought victory because they lost so many men.
Yeah, he and Burgoyne were in Boston watching the battle, and Clinton was just, whoa. I mean, he saw what was going on, so he took a contingent of Royal Marines, and he took part in the third attack.
The third wave.
Yeah. So the first two repulsed.
Yeah.
Third one, finally.
Yeah.
They finally.
And there was a little known fact, but it was the Pitcairn guy who had been a douche during Lexington.
Well, he was the guy that was in Lexington that told the men of Lexington to disperse. He said, "Drop your weapons and disperse." But our guys they dispersed, but they did not drop their weapons. Yeah. You don't tell an American to drop your weapon.
Yeah.
You can,
maybe disperse, but not drop your weapon. Well,
Well, no, he said disperse and drop your weapons. Yeah. Drop your weapons and disperse.
Well, he was shot, and I think he was shot and killed.
He was mortally wounded.
Yeah.
He was taken to the church on the north end church where the two lanterns.
And it was actually a black soldier that
it was a black soldier. Yeah.
By the name of Salem.
Yeah, they didn't have segregation.
No.
The blacks and whites fought side by side.
Together.
But it was a black guy, black American, who shot Pitcairn, and he was taken to the church, the famous church where the two lanterns, one by land, two by sea, that was meant for not just God, what is this?
Paul Revere.
Paul Revere, but anyone who was on the who could see.
Yeah.
Because Paul Revere was not the only guy that rode the horse.
No. And he wasn't the only one who owned a horse. There were a lot of people who owned horses. So, anyway. Moving. Okay, so we've done America, we've done the Middle East. Now we're going to sort of meet in the middle in France.
Okay.
Couple of battles during the Napoleonic Wars. One is the French invasion. The French invasion of Russia, at least the beginning of it, started June 24th in 1812 and ended in December, I think, 12th. Or 5th, somewhere in there. I think my notes say, ended December 14th.
I would not have wanted to have been in that battle.
Dude, it was going relatively well throughout the early going, but crazy enough, the heat and getting dysentery and all this stuff. Wait a minute, is that a joke?
What?
Are you going with a joke of some kind? Because I see this look on your face. What is it?
No, just nothing. I was just gonna throw in Old Man Winter, and kind of like Old Man Winter trying to return a soup. You ever... What's this with my soup?
Are you going? Is it Seinfeld?
Yeah, it's Seinfeld.
Yeah, it's like an old man trying to return soup in a deli. What?
That was the marine biologist one.
Yeah, classic, hole in one. So here's what's crazy: is that the invasion force started out with I think it was a little over 500,000, almost about 570,000 invading troops. Right. By the end of it, by December, they had wiped out just about 90%. 370,000 of them had died. 100,000 were wounded and 95,000 returned. That's going in because what happened was Napoleon just kept going in. They had these little battles and skirmishes. They had some battles, actual battles later on because the Russians kept retreating and going back. Eventually, Nicholas was like, the Tsar over Russia was like, look, you've got to stop and fight. Our honor's at stake. You got to at least fight. So they did some battles, but it really, in a lot of instances, it wasn't the battles that killed the soldiers.
Yeah,
it was the elements and disease.
It's climate change.
It was climate change. Yeah. Look, guys, we've got 12 years left, and
I don't think we have that much left.
I think maybe 8 actually, because I think it was. We need to drop that. Yeah.
I wish I knew a paleoclimatologist. Are they real?
A paleoclimatologist?
Yeah, did
what
you
is
see
that?
The Day After Tomorrow? My dad is a paleoclimatologist.
I did not remember that movie. I didn't when I watched it, I wanted to forget it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna talk about the dinosaur era, climate is not really. Although I do have books on the climate during the medieval period, so maybe. I should be a medieval climatologist.
You should be a paleoclimatologist.
No.
But here's the thing.
I wanted to be a paleontologist.
Here's a pretty cool graphic for you, or numbers for you. For every 12 soldiers of the Grand Army from France, 1 was killed in action, 2 were taken prisoners of war, of which 1 of the 2 died. 7 either died from climate or disease, and only 2 ended up returning back home. That's insane.
That is
like
insane.
That pretty much wipes out your entire. And the thing is like Napoleon still remained in power for another 2 years until he was exiled on the island of Elba, which leads us to June 18th of 1815, when he escapes Elba in the Battle of Waterloo. Battle of Waterloo.
Yeah, so he had, 100 days?
Huh?
Was it 100 days?
Of exile?
No, Napoleon's, I think they called it the 100 days, when Napoleon, when he returned, when he came off of Elba.
Yeah.
And then he had his 100 days, and then they exiled him again after the Battle of Waterloo.
Yeah.
And that was in June also.
Yeah. So. June 18th, 1815. And this, obviously, the 2 names that are well known is Napoleon and Duke Wellington.
Yeah.
The British officer, the British general.
You mean the Duke of Wellington?
The Duke. What did I say?
Duke Wellington. I think that's a band member.
No, that's Duke Ellington.
Ellington, close.
Yeah. Duke of Wellington.
Duke
right.
of Wellington. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was. Yeah. Because that's not even his name, Duke or Wellington.
No. His real name is Arthur something. I can never remember his name. But
I don't understand their accents, those Englishmen. So yeah.
I don't like them.
What are you, an Anglophile or an
No.
Anglophobe or?
Yeah, I'm an Anglophobe.
Anglophobe.
Yeah, I don't like the British accent is quite honestly one of the most annoying.
You know what did it for me was Harry. Harry and Meghan.
Oh, what a lovely couple.
England. Actually, no. Look, I love England.
Oh,
I
do
am
too.
an Anglophile, but what is the deal with Harry?
Guy's a loser. I'm gonna just give it to you straight. I'm not gonna give it to you straight. I'm leaving that. I'm gonna leave that to Oprah to cover.
Yeah, let's talk about.
But you had the Battle of Waterloo. You had the French you had the British, the Germans, the Belgians, the Dutch, and the Prussians. And you had Duke of Wellington going and Blucher from the Prussian general. So those are the 2 guys that were sort of leading the charge against that. You had multiple battles. I think it was the battle right before Waterloo. Blucher is defeated, but you still had everything pretty much intact. And so Napoleon thinks, okay, we've defeated them. We can go after Wellington, meet them. But Blucher comes in, and it was because of the Prussians coming in that they ended up defeating Napoleon. And some, things just did not go according to plan for Napoleon, and that was it. Napoleon, one of my favorite figures.
Well, this is why the Germans felt so betrayed by the English in World War I. Perfidious Albion, they used to call it.
What does that mean?
That has something, if my Latin is correct, but perfidy, England. That the England is no good. They're scheming, undermining you. Mm-hmm. Perfidy.
Perfidy, yeah.
Yeah, Perfidious Albion. Albion was the name for England.
Oh.
Perfidious Albion. That's where that comes from, because you can't. That's what the French were saying it, and the Germans were saying that you can't trust the English.
Can't trust the British.
Look it up, Perfidious Albion. But I mean, Britain and the Prussians had a history. I mean, the House of Hanover and the Windsors were of German descent. Mm-hmm. So that's why they just did not expect that the English would side with the French.
Now you're talking about what, World War I?
World War I,
yeah. Well, the douchebag, decides, hey, the Belgians, like, hey, don't worry about us coming through your backyard. Let us just get through.
Yeah, I think King Albert.
Yeah, you can't do that. Yeah, King Albert was like, no, I can't allow you to do that. Anyways, but
that's
moving on. Speaking
another,
of not being able to be trusted, the Germans, Operation Barbarossa.
Well,
this is another famous June battle.
Yeah, June 22nd, 1941. Now, that the Germans actually wanted to invade prior to that, but they were busy attacking Greece and Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
And then they had to launch
the
paratrooper invasion of Crete. So that kind of pushed them back a bit. But yeah, June 22nd, 3 million.
This one ends in December too.
Yeah. So
and
goes
that's
to
what
the
they're
Battle
saying.
of
It's like
Moscow
if they would have been, and that was the thing with. Here's the thing. Back to the Napoleon thing, trying to get into Russia, he got to Moscow, and when they got to Moscow, the city was on fire. They burned pretty much the entire city.
Napoleon, that one,
no.
But you're talking about in 1812.
Yeah, in 1812.
Not Hitler.
No, not Hitler.
Okay.
And so he sends off, hey, let's make peace. He sends a note to Nicholas in St. Petersburg, and there's no reply. So he's stuck in a burning city, and they're like, we got to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
And so they try to, and it's interesting, Germany under Hitler does pretty much the same thing. At the same exact time, it starts and ends.
Yeah.
And it's always winter that ends up killing him.
Old man winter.
Yeah. It was just soup in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Send it back.
Send it back.
Yeah. And so Operation Barbarossa, if you've not looked at even the numbers on what happened during this operation, the German invasion, they break the pact, the non-aggression pact.
Yeah, the non-aggression pact that was signed in August, so that
2 years prior,
Hitler wanted to invade Poland, but he was afraid about France and Britain, so they figured, okay, well, England was like, hey, Poland, we'll back you up. Hitler didn't want a two-front war, so he signed a peace treaty with Stalin. Yeah. They call it the Ribbentrop-Molotov or Molotov-Ribbentrop treaty. Molotov, the Soviet foreign minister, and Ribbentrop, yeah. Joachim Ribbentrop.
Oh,
He was a Joachim Ribbentrop.
Joachim?
W-A-K-I-M? J-O-A-C-H-I-M.
Oh, okay. That's different.
Joachim. I call him Joachim Ribbentrop.
Yeah.
So Ribbentrop and Molotov, where you get the Molotov cocktail. He made great cocktails.
Oh, they're wonderful.
Yeah.
They burned going down.
Yeah, they were on fire, let me tell you. He was on fire. So anyway.
Okay, mine was better. Go on there.
Okay, so all right. So, and it worked out because when Hitler invaded the West, he didn't have to worry about But the Soviets were going to invade Germany eventually. I mean, that was the plan. Stalin was gonna. So Stalin, what he did after Poland, he invades Finland, November 30, I think. The Winter War did not go well at first. Eventually, but and then they swept into the three Baltic nations: Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and then he attacks. He actually attacks a little country takes over a country called Tanu Tavu or something like that. It's sandwiched like between the Soviet Union and Mongolia somewhere. Tanu Tavu. Look it up.
I've actually.
Yeah, Tanu Tavu. Heard of it. Yeah, they're like, okay, we're gonna take it over. And then he goes and he attacks Romania. He takes over. I want to say Bessarabia. It's basically Moldavia, but it's Bessarabia and some other name. But yeah, it was Moldavia, Moldova. Mulva?
So stupid.
Well, it was the eastern part of Romania, so they took that.
Yeah, and
Bukovina. Bukovina, that's it. Bukovina and Bessarabia. I don't know why I remember that name.
Bukovina. I think it just sounds cool. Yeah, and Bessarabia sounds cool.
Bessarabia. Bukovina and Bessarabia. It's Moldavia, isn't it?
And Moldavia.
Yeah, it's Romania. It's part of Romania.
I'm going to name my daughter Moldavia. Yeah.
So,
be a nice girl.
He was already, so Stalin was already positioning himself because he was going to sweep into Eastern Europe.
But he's such an idiot. He killed off all of his military leaders.
He did. The purge.
I think he was killed off pretty much all of his admirals.
Yeah.
He did
quite a bit of it. Became all about himself.
Yeah.
It was just like in the book, The Animal Farm, where Napoleon was, Snowball won the first two battles. Mm-hmm. But, Anyway, so Hitler invades. Mm-hmm. The three armies. I think there was 3 million soldiers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Stalin at first wouldn't believe it. In fact, he had his intelligence telling him they're going to invade. Mm-hmm. There was a guy in Japan, I think, Richard York and Richard Yorg, something like that. I can't remember his name. Yeah. But he was even warning them, come on, guys. But he did say
actually, the U.S. and Britain sent telegrams or whatever and said, hey, Germany's probably going to attack.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I know what you're doing, you capitalist countries.
Yeah, you're just trying to create a wedge between me and my good pal Adolf.
Exactly.
Adolf wasn't...
Yeah, we're very against capitalists. Isn't Germany a capitalist country? Yeah, but who cares?
Actually, Germany wasn't a capitalist country.
Well, how did they make their money?
Well, actually, their economy was socialist-based. It was.
That's true.
Yeah, their economy was. So, look it up. Kid you not.
Yeah.
Anyway, so... We were
just attacking.
Stalin, for his birthday, I believe he received a birthday card from Adolf, or the other way around. But they were supposed to be pals. Mm-hmm. Adolf, my pal.
And he didn't buy into it.
Yeah.
And he thought he was like, hey, just go back.
If you read Mein Kampf,
go back across the border.
Yeah. If you read Mein Kampf, you would have known.
So I can attack you.
Yeah. So
in Mein Kampf, he talks about how, obviously Adolf Hitler was this huge anti-communist, and he wanted to, and he said that in Mein Kampf, like, we got to take out the Russians, or at least take portions of their land. We got to defeat the Russians. He hated the Russians.
They wanted
or the Soviets,
Lebensraum, living space.
Yeah.
They wanted to take over the Ukraine. They want to take over the Ukraine so that they could have all this farmland to feed the people, and then they'd bring in, Germans to come and live. They had to get rid of the Poles. They were going to completely wipe out all the Poles, and those that were alive would be kind of like slave labor. Yeah. And the Jews also would be slave labor. Yeah. But it was. It was. Wow. Yeah. There's a book out, I think it's called Badlands or something like that, just talks about all the miserable people who had to endure the fight between Stalin and Hitler. It was not a place you wanted to be. It's a land God pretty much abandoned. Yeah. I have to say that. Think about it.
But think about it. They kicked God out.
The Nazis did not believe in God. They had they didn't believe in. They were not Christians, as some people say. Yeah. They had their own Thule or something like that. They had their own little religion.
Really into dark.
Yeah, and the Soviets were atheists.
Atheists, yeah.
So there was no God.
They were devout atheists.
Yeah. Yeah, devout.
You like that?
So, it's like, okay, which do you prefer? Nazism or communism, death or bunga bunga. It was one of those scenarios. So.
Exactly, and you said the Soviets invaded Latvia.
Right? Yeah, they took over. They swept into Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania.
I'm actually considering converting.
Oh, because of the hats? Is that the Latvian Orthodox?
Exactly.
I like that.
All right, so that's an incredible battle that happened in June. The last one we're going to talk about is a war that the Americans were involved in, the Korean War that took place. It started on June 25th, 1950. This was a 3-year war that wiped out about 2 million Koreans, and a vast majority of them were civilians.
It was, Stalin, Mao Zedong just took over China the year before. And when the Soviet Union declared war on Japan, they swept into Manchuria. They gave the Maoists all the weaponry. That's why they were able to defeat Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists, who then fled to Taiwan, Formosa. But now Korea had been a Japanese colony, chosen, I think was what it was called. But there was an agreement that they would stop at the 38th parallel. Americans came in and they occupied the southern part, and there was a free election. Syngman Rhee, I think.
Syngman Rhee.
Syngman Rhee or Syngman? Syngman Rhee, yeah. He was elected by the people of South Korea, but you had the North. You had a guy.
He was not very nice either. So
Syngman Rhee,
yeah.
I heard he was.
He's a pretty brutal guy.
Yeah.
Which they were all brutal up, to a certain point.
But the North Korean.
But he's no Kim Il-sung.
Yeah, was that his name? Kim Il-sung.
Yeah. Right. Is that the dad?
He's the grandfather of Kim Jong Un or whatever, the guy who's the president now.
Yeah, if he's still alive.
But yeah, you had a grandfather who established North Korea, and then you had Kim Jong Un's father who died, like I think not too long ago.
Yeah.
And now he's in charge.
Yeah.
But they wanted to take over the rest of Korea, the Korean Peninsula,
and they got really close to doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pusan, I think.
Yeah, the Pusan perimeter was just this. The Pusan is a coastal town right at the very bottom of the Korean Peninsula.
Yeah, it's on the southeast side.
Yeah, and it's just like you had. And what was stupid is that when the North Koreans attacked, here's the thing: is MacArthur just thought North Koreans are not stupid enough to attack. They're not going to. And he was getting, and this was early days of the CIA. He was getting intelligence that hey, North Korea is probably going to attack very soon, but he labeled it as the least reliable threat or whatever. He just didn't think it was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so when the North Koreans actually attacked in force, the first group, the Americans that's in it because the South Koreans were just overrun. We didn't have any like military. We had advisors there. We sent 500 people. Task Force Smith was the first. That was it.
Okay.
And this is like multiple divisions. You had countless tanks.
Or the North.
Yeah, the North. Yeah, because the Soviets had provided everything for them.
Yeah, Stalin and Mao both gave them the green light. Go ahead.
Do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And so the North came all the way down to Pusan, almost pushed everybody into the ocean, and eventually you sent in more and more Americans
into the Pusan perimeter.
And then on September 15th, you had the Incheon landing, which was one of MacArthur's most brilliant, if not his most brilliant, military move, and that was landing at Incheon, which is sort of.
It's kind of like in the middle, like west
sort of in the middle, Seoul. Like a little below Seoul, but it's on the west coast.
Yeah.
And they came in right behind the North Koreans, and the North Koreans flipped out. They start moving all the way back. And so the Americans, the UN troops, and the South Korean troops moved all the way up to the Yalu River, which is sort of that barrier between Manchuria and Korea. And then all of a sudden, 300,000 Chinese come swinging in.
Yeah.
And drive all the way back. And where do we wind up? Exactly where we started, at the 38th parallel.
Yeah, they did. They took over Seoul again.
Yep.
And then we recaptured Seoul.
Mm-hmm.
Now, during that time, there were, I think Chesty Puller was there, but the Marines at the Frozen Chosin.
Yeah.
And the Marines didn't retreat. They were just, everybody else retreated, and they were surrounded. Mm-hmm. So the Marines were like, okay, we can't stay here. This isn't going to be like Stalingrad. So, and it wasn't a retreat. It was a withdrawal, like a combat withdrawal.
How did he phrase that?
Yeah, because Marines
sort of like
Marines don't retreat.
Yeah.
But he said, this isn't a retreat. We're just going to fight our way to our men that's to the south of us.
Yeah.
Which is what they did.
Yeah.
They fought their way
to... The Battle of the Frozen Chosin, if you just Google that or look at and look at the maps on as far as the attack goes, it's like this is impossible to get out of. And yet the Marine Division got out of it.
Yeah, they fought their way to the coast.
Fought their way out.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And like, here's the thing. You've got the elements that play such a pivotal role in a lot of these battles. You had, when the French invaded Russia, when the Germans invaded Russia, and the Korean War. The Korean War, it was just, I forgot which general was saying, it's like, you couldn't have found a worse place to have a war than Korea, because the elements are so bad. It's either freaking blazing hot, you got the typhoons, and then you've got super cold where you got 40 below zero. 40 below zero.
I mean, it's a very mountainous.
How do you survive?
It's a very mountainous country. You've been to Korea.
Yeah, it is very mountainous. I mean, they're not big mountains. They're more like really large hills, but
like
that's what it was. Yeah, Pork Chop Hill. Just going up. Oh, we want okay, go back. Oh no, we're coming back. That's unbelievable. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is all the battles we have for today. You got anything else, man?
Well, let's talk about book and movie.
Book involved.
Yes.
Book involved.
All right. You want to go first?
I can go first.
You go first.
All right, my book recommendation is The Korean War by Max Hastings. A wonderfully written book, very easy to read. I highly encourage you to read it. Max Hastings is he's a class, he's still alive. He's super old, but he's one of those classic military authors. You should read some of his stuff. My movie recommendation is actually a series, an HBO series called The Pacific.
Hey, Chesty Puller is in that
Chesty
one.
Puller, and I like the way he acts. Sergeant John Basilone. Dude, have you seen The Pacific?
Yeah, in fact, I met
when
one of the
he's got
guys.
that machine gun and all the guys are like,
yeah. That's when he was
are
on
you
Guadalcanal.
kidding me?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
You know, I met one of the guys that fought. That was in the Pacific.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was okay. Eugene Sledge. Mm-hmm. He wrote that book with the old breed. Well, his squad commander, he was a corporal. Bergen, I think was his name. Well, I met Bergen. And he wrote his own book about the Pacific War.
Yeah.
And he talked about how he and Sledge, how they worked together.
Very
but
cool.
yeah, if you watch the Pacific, and like when Sledge arrives in the tent, he sees that Egyptian guy who won like an Academy Award for Best Actor, Malik something or other. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's like one of the other privates, but the guy that's the corporal who gives him orders, that's Bergen, R.V. Bergen. But that's the guy I met. He was here in Houston.
Nice.
So I met him a couple times. Got an autograph. There's even a picture of me somewhere with him.
There you go.
Yeah.
Probably on your phone.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
They
all are on there.
Where's my phone?
I don't feel like dealing with that. All right, your book and movie recommendation.
Okay, well, my book is going to be, when we talk about the 6-Day War, there's a book that I read called The 6 Days of War by Michael Oren. Now, he, just to lay it on, he was the Israeli ambassador to the United States, so naturally. But I mean, come on, they won the war.
They won the war. And who writes?
The winners. But, this book was so, we talk about a lot of books that are good, all right? Mm-hmm. This is a book that was so good that, I just could not put it down. It really is a very well-written book. Yep. There's a little cameo in there of the present king of Jordan, Abdullah, mm-hmm. when the Israelis were bombing the Jordanian Air Force, and King Hussein was all like shook up by it. His son, the present king, mm-hmm. Abdullah, was like going, yay! They're all excited because they're seeing all this action taking place. They didn't realize that
they were losing.
that they were losing.
Yeah.
So you have the little cameo of
I guess he needed to use his Abdullah of Blangada.
Have you seen his wife?
Sorry. No.
King Abdullah's wife?
Is she beautiful?
Oh, man, yeah.
She does well.
Hottie. She is a
well,
hot
you're
queen.
a king, right?
Well,
so
King Hussein's wife was even hotter.
Yeah.
Queen Noor.
Is that Grace Kelly?
No, Queen Noor. Queen Noor was probably the second hottest queen ever. The hottest.
Right.
Okay, well, there was Elizabeth, the wife of Edward IV. I heard she was pretty smoking hot.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of Princess Grace of Monaco.
Grace Kelly.
Grace Kelly. Yeah.
To Catch a Thief. Classic. All right, is that your movie recommendation?
My movie recommendation is Midway.
Hey, there we go.
With Woody Harrelson and Dennis Quaid playing Halsey and
Patrick Wilson. What's his name? Patrick Wilson?
Who?
Is that his name?
Who?
The guy who has the glasses, he's the intelligence guy?
Oh, the main guy or Rochefort? You're talking about the main guy. Actor. I don't know what his name is. He plays someone Laney
he's
or
on
Lacey.
He's on the Alamo.
Yes, that's right. He played William Travis. I forgot about that. Yeah, he played William Travis in the Alamo, the one that Dr. Stephen Hardin took place in.
He was in. He was on the Alamo. Hey.
But this one's got a Jonas brother.
He wasn't that bad.
No, he was actually did pretty good part.
He did pretty good.
But the Midway, the thing I loved about Midway so much was that it talked or showed what went on between Pearl Harbor attack on December 7th and the Midway. So it showed those 6 months. The Enterprise, the Hornet, mm-hmm. those carriers were very active during that time. The Lexington, the Yorktown. Yeah. They showed the Doolittle raid, mm-hmm. of which we interviewed the last survivor, Dick Cole, who was in that movie, by the way. So he's the guy, the co-pilot, sat next to Dick. Dick Cole sat next to Jimmy Doolittle. But it shows the Doolittle raid. It shows the Enterprise, the Yorktown, the Lexington attacking Japanese islands. It shows the Battle of Coral Sea, which took place in 1 month before. And we lost the Lexington, and the Yorktown was heavily damaged. So it shows all the events.
It shows a lot of good information.
Right, and then it shows the Battle of Midway.
They did a good job being accurate on it.
And it was an accurate portrayal of the Battle of Midway. So watch it. It's good. Woody Harrelson plays a great Nimitz.
Yeah, he does.
I mean, that guy's a good actor.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, so that's my movie recommendation.
Well done. All right. Speaking of movie recommendations, you and I went and watched that movie. Remember that?
Did.
Yeah. Good times. It's the only movie we've ever seen together because we're not that good of friends. All right. James 4:1-2 is our scripture for this episode, and it says this: "What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire, but do not have. So you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want. So you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God." Yeah. That's that has a lot to do with what we were talking about. We covet, Mein Kampf. I want the land. Just
covet your neighbor's wife's ass.
Yep, that is also a scripture.
It's one of the big ones in top 10.
It is. Real big. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the show. Alan, where can people find us?
They can find us on Facebook. They can find us on Instagram. They can find us on YouTube. Subscribe. YouTube. Now, we also have our very own website, www.thesonsofhistory.com. You can watch videos, interviews, merchandise, events coming up.
Yeah. We got a blog and all that jazz in there. Yeah.
And it even has a history of us.
Yeah.
Which I need to update because I've actually visited a lot more battlefields since that time.
There you go.
Yeah.
Send it on over. We'll put it in. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the show. We hope that you enjoyed it. We will talk to you later. Don't go start any battles.